Welcome to the next session about life under the sea. Before we begin, we're going to do a quick refresh of the things we learnt about carnivores. In the last presentation, we learnt that carnivores eat meat, and we spoke about triggerfish, grouper, and trevally. Triggerfish have a spine that helps them to get stuck in holes when they sleep. This is a way to protect them from any predators trying to pull them out of the hole. Divers also see this when triggerfish feel threatened, and it's a sign for a diver to move away. Remember, it's extremely important to respect the wildlife when we're in the ocean, and not to chase or to touch anything. You wouldn't touch a lion on safari, would you? Titan triggerfish can be very territorial. They're known to chase divers away if you get too close. Divers call this getting triggered, and yes, it has happened to me before. Groupers eat fish and crustaceans, like crabs and shellfish. Their mouths are filled with tiny little teeth, like you can see here in this picture of a potato grouper. These teeth hold their meal in place before they're swallowed whole. Large trevally, like this bluefin trevally, often travel alone. They have a forked tail, which indicates that they are pelagic. Do you remember what pelagic means? It means a fish that swims in deeper parts of the ocean. Remember this fact, it'll come in handy later. Alright then, should we get our teeth stuck into this one? Today we're going to be talking about some of my favourite creatures in the ocean, and maybe even the whole world. Sharks. They are often the apex predator or top predator in our oceans, depending on the species. Lots of sharks sit at the top of the ocean ecosystem and manage the population of carnivores, herbivores, and corallivores that live in the ocean. There are over 500 species of shark in the ocean, and they actually evolved from rays. I bet you didn't know that. They are typically torpedo-shaped fish, built for speed. There are so many cool facts to share with you about sharks. Let's begin. First up, we're going to talk about the anatomy of sharks. Interesting facts about how their bodies are made up. Can you guess how many bones a shark has? The answer is actually 0. Sharks don't have a single bone in their body. Isn't that amazing? In fact, their bodies and their skeletons are made up of cartilage, the same thing that makes up your nose and your ears. Sharks can go through up to 30,000 teeth in their lifetime. That is a lot of teeth to lose. They can have from 2 to 15 rows of teeth in their mouth at any one time. They sit flat in their mouth, and as they grow forwards in the jaw, they become their front teeth. And if they get loose, they just fall out. They can last as little as just 5 days. Some sharks are even known to lose teeth before they are born. If you go somewhere where sharks are feeding, you can often find shark teeth on the seafloor. Shark skin is made up of thousands of little teeth-shaped plates called denticles. Not to be confused with tentacles like an octopus. These are denticles with a D. This is what their skin looks like under a microscope. Pretty cool, isn't it? A shark's sense of smell is over 100 times better than a human's. Can you imagine being able to smell bacon from almost a mile away? There would be a lot of rumbling tummies. Can you point out a shark's nostrils? That's it. They're the big holes on either side of their head. It has been said that a shark can smell a drop of blood in an Olympic swimming pool of water, but that isn't quite true for all sharks. Can you see the little spots on the underside of this shark's nose? These are called ampullae of Lorenzini. Can you say that with me? Ampullae Lorenzini. It's a little bit difficult, but well done. These are nerve endings that sharks use to sense electric currents. Everything that lives has a tiny electric current. That's right, even you and me. Fish produce microelectric currents, or really tiny electric currents, which sharks use to find and hunt their prey. A shark's ampullae on the underside of their nose are more important than its sense of smell. How cool is that? Some scientists also think that sharks use ampullae to navigate around the world using the Earth's magnetic field, just like a compass. Sharks have forked tails, just like Trevally. Do you remember what a forked tail might mean? It could mean the fish is pelagic, which means it likes to swim in the deeper ocean. Sharks have different shaped forked tails depending on how they live. Thresher sharks and blue sharks are incredibly quick pelagic ocean swimmers, so the top fork of their tail is much longer, like you can see in the picture here. Shark gills are different to other fish gills. Fish gills are covered by a gill plate, which protects the gills. Shark gills are visible on their sides, so you can see here on this picture of a white-tip reef shark. Sharks have 5 gills, and a few of them have 6, like the 6-gill shark, or even 7, like the 7-gill shark. Most sharks have to keep swimming to breathe. They keep their mouths open as they swim, and the water flows over their gills, which filters the oxygen out of the water for them. Some sharks are able to use the muscles in their cheeks to pump water into their mouths and through their gills. This is called buccal pumping. These sharks can therefore spend time on the bottom of the ocean. Things like white-tip reef sharks, nurse sharks, zebra sharks, and Wobbegong sharks are some of these. Did you know that some sharks give birth to live young, just like mammals like you and me, or monkeys, for example? Other sharks can lay eggs. I bet you didn't know that. Can you guess what a baby shark is called? Would you have guessed a pup? Baby sharks are called pups, just like baby dogs. We're going to speak to my best friend Kat now. Kat works for a very important charity called the Shark Trust. They not only protect sharks in British waters, but also across Europe and around the world. She also leads the Great Egg Case Hunt, which tracks shark eggs that are found on our beaches in the UK. Let's speak to her now. Hello, Kat.
Hi, Ellie.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Very good. I love your shark print shirt.
Thank you. Liking your shark t-shirt as well.
Representing today. So I'm really excited. We're going to talk to you a little bit about shark reproduction, which I know you know loads about. So thank you so much for talking to me about it.
No worries.
So I thought maybe we could start with telling me some of the ways that sharks can reproduce.
Okay, so sharks actually have a few different ways that they can reproduce, and this depends on what species they are, so the different types of sharks.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of species will produce live young, and that's just like mammals will do. Some produce by laying eggs that are protected inside a tough capsule, and these are actually left on the sea floor whilst the young develops inside them. And then there's another method that's kind of halfway in between, where the female will produce eggs, but they're actually kept inside the female to hatch, and then they're born as if they're live young. So depending on what type of shark it is, they've got quite different reproductive strategies.
That's so interesting, because obviously, like lots of mammals, they just have young in one particular way, but there's so many different species of sharks, and there's so many different ways they can reproduce.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of that will depend on where they live in the sea as to how they'll reproduce as well.
So how long can sharks be pregnant for?
So again, it depends on which species we're talking about. Some, like the spiny dogfish, are pregnant for an amazing 24 months. So that's 2 years.
Wow.
And the green-eyed spur dog is even longer at about 2.5 years. So those species, they're the ones that produce the egg cases that stay inside, and then they're hatched as if they're live young. And they're quite small sharks. They're not big sharks, but they've got those really, really long gestation periods. And then the shark with the shortest length is actually the grey bamboo shark, and that's only 70 to 80 days, so only kind of 2.5, 3 months. Wow. So it's very different again. For egg-laying species that produce those egg cases, it generally takes between about 5 months and a year for the young to develop inside and then to hatch.
So I guess that's maybe closer to how long a person might be pregnant for. So a person's pregnant for 9 to 10 months, and that's almost the same as, I guess, the egg-laying sharks.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the names for shark eggs? Because I know they have names.
So shark eggs or egg cases, what you might kind of have heard them called more commonly is mermaids' purses. And you can often find these when you head out to the beach.
And can you show me what some shark eggs and myomatosis look like?
Yeah, so again, depends on species. So we've got some species like cat sharks, which produce their egg cases, which are kind of these long, thinner shapes, and then they've got these curly tendrils on either end. And we've got a couple of different types of those ones.
Your name is Cat, and that's a cat shark, and it has curly tendrils, and you've got curly hair.
Exactly, yeah. And so these curly tendrils, unlike my hair, are used, the female will kind of wrap them around seaweed, and that will keep the egg case safe whilst the young's growing inside, just to make sure it's not washed away by any tide or currents.
Oh, that's really cool.
And then we've got other ones like these ones that are from the skates and the rays, which are kind of cousins of sharks, and they've got those pointed horns on each corner, and they're kind of laid on the seabed. And they'll get covered in sand and kind of gravel and things like that, and that'll again just help them to weigh down and stop them from washing away. So they can vary in size from one that's kind of huge like that, which is from a flapper skate, which gets to 3 meters long, which is kind of wider than an adult's arm span. And they can be kind of really tiny, like these little starry skate ones. So they really vary in size. And then another cool shape one, we've got these ones, which are this kind of funky spiral shape. So the female will actually pick that up in her mouth and then wedge it into the rocks to kind of keep them safe and tucked out of the way. And they're from Port Jackson sharks, which are in a family called the horn sharks.
Wow, that's so cool. So many different shapes and sizes of egg cases.
Yeah, and depending on all the different features, we can figure out which species laid them.
That's really cool. So from what you said about egg cases, the mother just leaves them and then leaves and goes and swims off, but she always makes sure the egg case is protected in some way.
Yeah, so they'll try and anchor them securely so they don't drift away. But once they've laid those egg cases, that's it. Parent responsibility is done. So the young will spend quite a few months growing inside the capsule. And when they're ready to come out, the top of the egg case, kind of between the horns there, that will split open. And then this perfectly formed miniature version of the adults that's completely independent will swim out of there, and they'll have to find their own food and hide from anything that might want to eat them.
And how big can the baby sharks be when they're born? I know it'll probably differ, but what sort of sizes?
Yeah, so I mean, from kind of one of these ones, one of the nurse hound ones, they're about 16 centimetres, so about that long. So if you can imagine, it will be kind of bent around inside there. So you'll have the head and the kind of the body bending round and the tail poking up there. So they'll be kind of quite small as they come out of these capsules.
Wow, that's amazing. And how many babies do sharks have at a time? Do they lay more than one egg when they're laying eggs?
So for egg-laying species, they'll produce 2 egg cases at a time, and this will be every couple of days over kind of quite a few months. For other species like the blue shark that gives birth to live young, they can produce up to 135 pups in a litter. Something like the short fin makos up to 25. Whale sharks have been found to produce 300 pups. And then on the other end of the scale, you've got species like sand tiger sharks, and these pups are actually cannibals. So the first one to hatch will actually eat the other siblings. So the sand tiger female will only give birth to 2 pups in a litter, and that's 1 from each uterus.
Wow, that's so amazing. What a wide range of numbers, up to hundreds of sharks at any one time. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. So thank you so much for sharing some amazing shark egg facts. That's super interesting. You mentioned that there are sharks in British waters and that you might find egg cases on the beach when you're out and around. And I know that you are in charge of the Great Egg Case Hunt, which runs around the UK and also other countries sometimes.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about how people can get involved?
Yeah, so all you need to do is next time you're at the beach, just keep a lookout for these mermaids' purses. They're often hidden amongst the seaweed. You can see they're quite dark in colour, kind of greeny browns and blacks. So they kind of blend in quite well with the seaweed. But if you find some, you can look at the different features on them and figure out which species it comes from using our identification guides. And then you can let us know which beach you found it on, and kind of when you found it, and then we can add it onto our Great Egg Case Hunt maps.
Brilliant. So I'll share the link to that identification guide in the links below, so everyone can have a look for egg cases next time they're out and around on the beach, and hopefully add some more eggs to your map.
Excellent, thank you.
Brilliant. All right, Kat, so we'll talk to you a little bit later on. Thank you very much.
All right then, bye.
That was so interesting, wasn't it? Thank you so much, Kat. We look forward to hearing from you later on. Now that we've talked about the anatomy of sharks in general, we're going to start talking about some specific sharks. The biggest group of sharks is called whalers, or requiem sharks. There are 56 species of shark in this group, and we're going to be talking about a few of my favourites. First, sharks that live on reefs, like white-tip and black-tip reef sharks. We'll then move on to some of the chunkier sharks you can see in deeper waters like grey reef sharks and oceanic silvertips. Finally, we'll speak about the biggest predators that are often the ones people are most scared of, but I love: bull sharks, and finally, tiger sharks. White-tip reef sharks can grow to be up to 1.6 metres in length. Can you guess why they might be called a white-tip shark looking closely at this photo? That's right, because they are easily recognisable with the white tips on their dorsal and tail fins. They have slender bodies and are easily recognisable. They are nocturnal hunters. Do you remember what the word nocturnal means? It means at night. White-tip reef sharks hunt at night. During the day, they are surprisingly quite shy and hide in caves where they can be seen hanging out with their friends. When black-tip reef sharks are juveniles, aged up to 9 years old, they spend their times in mangroves or shallow lagoons hunting on small fish. You can often spot their black-tip dorsal and tail fins sticking out of the water as they swim around hunting fish. Grey reef sharks can grow to be up to 1.8 metres long, and they like to hang out a little bit deeper, between 30 and 50 metres depth, on the edge of reefs. They are quite stocky, fat sharks. Whereas black-tip reef sharks have a black tip to their dorsal and tail fin, grey reef sharks have a black stripe at the back edge of their tail. That, plus their body shape, makes them quite easy to recognise. They can often be quite curious about scuba divers and might come quite close to check you out underwater, which is really cool. We're getting into some of the bigger whaler sharks now. Oceanic silvertip sharks can be up to 3 metres long, almost twice as long as white-tip reef sharks. These sharks are often seen by themselves and sometimes in pairs. Now, bull sharks can grow to be up to 3.5 metres in length. They have very round bodies, which makes them very distinctive. They are known to be quite calm or docile when they're pregnant, which is common in other sharks, like the great white. They often don't like to move too fast when they're pregnant because they want to save their energy to help their pups grow in their bellies. Tiger sharks are the biggest of the whaler shark family and can grow to be over 5 metres long. The biggest tiger shark ever recorded, though, was over 7 metres long. That's taller than the ground floor and first floor of your house put together. They are scavengers. Do you know what that means? Scavengers will pick and eat anything that's going. Other scavengers I can think of are vultures or hyenas, like you find in the film The Lion King. Looking at this picture of a tiger shark, can you think why they get their name? They have these really beautiful, distinctive stripes down their sides, just like a tiger. This is the sign that divers might give each other if they see one. Tiger, shark. Tiger, shark. Hammerhead sharks are so unique looking. Hammerhead sharks are so unique looking. They have evolved so that their eyes are further apart. This gives them a much wider field of vision. Because of their wider head, they also have more ampullae of Lorenzini, which makes them more aware of fish that they can hunt. Do you remember what ampullae of Lorenzini are? They are the nerves which can recognise electric currents. The shape of their head also means that they can capture fast prey because their head can slice through the water. There are 8 species of hammerhead sharks, including scalloped hammerhead sharks, which have ridges along their noses like the one pictured here, and great hammerhead sharks. Great hammerhead sharks have smooth noses and can grow to be about 6 metres long. The smallest hammerhead shark is the scalloped bonnethead shark, which is less than 1 metre long. I think that sounds pretty cute. What about you? Hammerhead sharks can often be seen in really big schools in places like the Maldives, Socorro in Mexico, and the Galapagos Islands. They are often seen in tropical oceans, but in the cooler waters, and are known to be very shy. If there's a big school nearby, a few sharks might come and scout out the area to see if it's any good to hunt for the rest of the school to come in. Next, we're going to be talking about some bottom-dwelling sharks. Like the white-tip reef sharks, these sharks can breathe while staying still. Can you remember what this is called? It's called buccal pumping. They use the muscles in their cheeks to pump water through their gills whilst they are staying still. Nurse sharks, zebra sharks and wobbegong sharks all like to spend their time resting on the ocean floor. Nurse sharks can grow to be about 3 metres long. That's as tall as your room. They like to eat cephalopods like squid and octopus and hunt at night. Can you say the word cephalopod? It's a tough one. Cephalopod. Cephalopod. We'll be learning more about those in another lesson. Don't worry. This shark is called a zebra shark, but it doesn't look much like a zebra, does it? As an adult, the zebra shark has spots, not stripes. That's why it might also be called a leopard shark. This can cause some confusion as there already is a leopard shark. It's like when there's someone with your same name in class at school. Things can get a little confusing. When it's a juvenile, zebra sharks have stripes just like a zebra. This is the way to protect them from predators, as they look just like banded sea snakes, which are venomous, so bigger fish or other sharks are unlikely to attack them. Wobbegong sharks are found around Indonesia and Australia. They are sometimes referred to as carpet sharks because some of the varieties are tasseled around the edges, just like the edges of rugs or carpets. A wobbegong's tail curves around and they wiggle it to make it look just like a fish. When a fish can come in to check it out, the wobbegong shark can attack. Now, we're not going to talk just about the biggest shark in the ocean, but the biggest fish in the ocean, the whale shark. Whale sharks can grow to be over 12 metres long, sometimes even as big as 18 metres. That's bigger than a double-decker bus. Although they look quite slow and relaxed, because they have such big tails, they can actually swim really fast. Despite their size, whale sharks eat small fish, plankton, and krill. Krill are tiny little crustaceans that float and swim in the ocean. Whale sharks are filter feeders. They have huge mouths and they filter out their dinner from the rest of the water. I was very lucky that my sister used to work in the Maldives with whale sharks, and she was able to tell me lots of interesting facts about working with whale sharks. She used to work with scientists putting tags on whale sharks. It's important to tag whale sharks because very little is known about them. We don't know where they go to breed, and we don't know where they go to give birth. We also don't often know how far they can swim and what their migratory patterns will be like. So where they move between islands to islands or countries to countries. So that's why putting tags on sharks is really important for scientists to learn more about these creatures. She was also able to work on identifying whale sharks to manage and keep track of the population. Did you know that a whale shark can be identified by the spots above its gills? Each whale shark has a unique pattern of spots by its gills, just like you and me have a unique fingerprint on our fingers. My sister worked with whale sharks when she was living in the Maldives, and she was able to identify whale sharks, and if they didn't have a name already, she was able to name them. She named a whale shark Mango once. What would you name a whale shark? Despite what you might think, there are sharks in the ocean around the UK, which I think is really cool. We're going to talk again to my friend Kat about the sharks that live right on our doorstep. Cool, so thank you so much for joining me again, Kat. We're going to talk about something really interesting that I don't think many people will know about, and that's that there are sharks around the UK.
Yes, there are.
Wow, can you tell me what types of sharks live around the UK?
So we actually have around 40 different types of sharks that live in British waters. So we've got the basking shark, which is the second largest fish in the world. So that grows to around 10 metres. We've got the shortfin mako, which is the fastest shark on record, which reaches speeds of over 30 miles an hour, so about as fast as your parents would be driving the car around town. We've got blue sharks, which can swim huge distances across the Atlantic between the UK and America each year. We've got thresher sharks, which have got a huge long tail and they can jump right out of the water. We've got angel sharks, which are flat sharks that live on the seabed. And then we've got porbeagles, which are actually cousins of the great white shark. And then we've got a lot of smaller, kind of more coastal species like small spotted cat sharks, nurse hounds, topes, smooth hounds, as well as their cousins, the skates and rays, which are quite closely related.
Brilliant. That's so many sharks. I had no idea. Have you been able to swim with any sharks around the UK?
Only a few species. So in the UK, I've been swimming with basking sharks, which swim along with their mouths wide open to kind of take in lots of plankton, and they'll kind of close their mouths to gulp and swallow that. And blue sharks I've swum with, which are really fantastic, bright blue colour and get really curious. And then some of the cat sharks as well, like the small spotted cat shark and the nurse hound. Many of the species we've got in British waters, you're not really going to see them when you just go down to the seaside. They're much further out, so getting the chance to swim with them is very lucky.
Okay, well, so you don't have to worry when you're dipping your toes in that you're going to get nibbled by a shark.
You're probably not going to see any of them, no.
And why is sharks in British waters such a great thing?
So sharks make up a really important part of the world's biodiversity. So that's all of the different types of animals that are living on both land and in the sea. Each species has a different role in the marine ecosystem, so where they live. That could be if they're species that live on the seabed or far out in the sea. Generally, a lot of these species are quite high up in the food chain, so they can keep populations of other fish and other species in check, and it kind of keeps a good balance in the ocean. So it's great that we have such a variety of sharks right here in the UK, but it's also really important around the world as well.
Brilliant, that's so interesting. Thank you so much for letting us know about the sharks that are in the UK. That's really interesting.
You're welcome. Keep your eyes out.
Will do. Thank you so much, Kat. See you soon.
Bye.
It was super interesting. I really hope that one day I can spot a basking shark in the British waters. How cool would that be? So we've been talking about sharks and sharing some really interesting facts around them. Really good for us to talk about why sharks are important for the ocean ecosystem. Sharks cleverly eat fish that are sick or are overabundant, which means that there are too many of them. This helps with managing the population of fish on the reef and makes sure that there is a balance in the ecosystem, that there is really good biodiversity. Without sharks, we might see too many carnivores, which would eat all the herbivores and corallivores. Do you remember why herbivores and corallivores are important? That's right, they look after the health of the coral reef. That's why it's really important that we have a healthy shark population on our reefs. You might not know this, but many sharks are endangered species. There are lots of ways in which shark populations are affected by humans, and I'm going to talk about a few for you now. When fishermen use big nets to catch fish, sometimes other creatures can get caught in the nets also. Things like turtles, dolphins, and even sharks. This is called bycatch. When these creatures get caught in the net, they can't get to the surface, like turtles or dolphins need to, or they can't swim, like most sharks need to breathe. This means that a lot of the time, unfortunately, these bycatch creatures die in the nets. There is something you can do at home to protect sharks though. If you choose to eat fish, please try to look for fish that has been line caught. Often on tuna tins, for example, it will say if a tuna has been caught by a pole and line, so a fishing line, which reduces the risk of bycatch or catching other creatures by accident. Dolphin friendly isn't the same as pole and line. Remember that. Sometimes people can believe that eating certain things can heal or help them. For example, some people believe that rhino horn or elephant tusk is good for them, but there is no scientific research to prove that this is true. Similar to that, some people believe that shark fins are good for you. This is very popular in countries like Asia, where they eat a lot of powdered shark fins as medicine or even whole shark fins in soup. There is such a big demand for shark fins that millions of sharks are killed each year just for their fins. Millions! The rest of the shark is often thrown back into the ocean where it dies, which is very sad. It's really important to remember that if you aren't going to use the whole fish should stay in the ocean. Remember that ocean souvenirs like shark jaws, fins, or shark-related gifts should stay in the ocean. The less people buy them, the less there will be to sell. The same goes for shells and corals. These belong in the ocean. You can become a citizen scientist and help out with valuable research on sharks. Join in with the great egg case hunt with my friend Kat next time you take a walk on the beach. Just be careful of the waves. You can learn more about the egg case hunt on the Shark Trust website, which I'll link to in the description. You can also report shark sightings, from learning about the different colours that sharks might have from ocean to ocean, to understanding the size of whale shark populations around the world. This information helps researchers and conservationists in looking after these very misunderstood fish. As always, there are other things you can also do at home to protect the ocean, which is also great for the whole planet. Try to reduce your carbon footprint, take public transport, cycle or walk to go to school if you can. If you are in the water diving or snorkeling, remember not to touch the coral and to just enjoy the view. Thank you for watching. I have a lot of people to thank today for the cool photos and videos that you saw. Blue Mind Divers and Scuba Playa in Mexico, Kira from Ahmed Jepan Divers in Bali, Joyce Chan, my dive buddy, Brad Fisher, who works on the Great Barrier Reef, Christian Torres, who splits his time between Florida and Mexico diving with sharks, Elizabeth Lowries from Oceans Below in Koh Tao, Thailand, Flossie, who works for the Manta Trust in the Maldives, Debs Burns, who is a marine biologist in the Coral Sea, where the Great Barrier Reef is in Australia, Kat Gordon, who works for the Shark Trust in the UK, and my sister Lisa, who has worked in the Maldives and the Caribbean as a marine biologist. As always, there is an activity pack put together by my friend Naomi with some questions, colouring in and drawing in activities. There is also an online quiz for those of you without a printer. I'll also link to some really great posters from the Shark Trust which talks about egg cases and also sharks in British waters. Let me know if you have any questions about the sharks we spoke about in this lesson, and if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe so you get notified when the next lesson is available. Thank you so much and see you next time.